Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of the Black Badge, a Wynonna Earp fan podcast. I'm Kevin Batchelder.
And I'm Bonnie Farrar.
And saying that we have a treat for you would be a massive understatement.
Yes, it's the holidays. 2020 has been a year that many of us would like to move on from for lots of reasons. But we decided to close out the podcast with a bang, and we couldn't think of anyone better to have on the podcast, honestly, than the very lovely and wonderful Dominique Provost-Chalkley. So surprise!
Yes, surprise in many ways.
Yeah, like it's been 2 years since we had her on our podcast. A lot has happened in those 2 years. And I think, Kevin, it would be an understatement to say that talking to her is a delight. I don't even know how to describe it, but that doesn't feel adequate.
No, it doesn't, especially when Dom is so willing to give of her time and be so open, as many of you know from previous discussions, and you'll hear in this one coming up, for almost 2 hours worth of content here for you folks. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so since this podcast is already 2 hours long, I think Kevin and I will let Dominique do it all. So please just grab a cup of tea, a hot chocolate, whatever is exciting to you, and sit back and enjoy 2 hours of listening to Dom talk. I'll say she talks, in French as well at some point in this podcast. So enjoy. Kevin and I are so excited, like beyond excited, to be joined today by Dominique Provost-Chalkley. Welcome back to the podcast, Dom.
Thank you. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm really excited to be here too. It's been, it feels like it has been 3 lifetimes since we did this.
It has. And it actually has.
It has, hasn't it? I think for everyone. Yes, it's been an interesting period, but I'm just really glad to be talking to you. It feels like we're reconnecting with old friends. So can't wait to have a chat.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. It's been 2 years. And a lot has happened. I know, crazy, right? And a lot has happened in those 2 years. I made a tea. I think you did too.
We have tea at the ready,
That's right.
We've got everything we could possibly need.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start off by talking about 2 years ago, right? Why not start at the beginning? Your last podcast with us was, I think, our listeners' absolute most impactful podcast that I think we've ever done. It has just touched and impacted so many different lives. We get tons of messages, tweets, you name it. To Kevin and I talking about just how inspiring and uplifting and motivational and just people put it on when they're having a tough time, because it makes them feel like, hey, you know what, like they can get through stuff, and just reminds people, it was a really impactful. So no pressure to make this one better.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, bloody hell. Right, I best get my A game out then. No, that's just so wonderful to hear. I remember, I remember exactly where I was when I did it. And I remember it was this sort of magic moment where I felt like you held such a safe space for a really honest conversation. And I'm really glad that it resonated with people, and that in some way exposing that vulnerability helps others. I think it's been a big, that was really like a big lesson for me and a big turning point in my own journey about how I'm going to navigate things and how I'm going to sort of approach this journey of being of being in, I suppose, in some sort of limelight, and how to sort of how to navigate that and how to be myself through it. So it really was a very big turning point. So thank you very much once again, and I'm really glad to hear that people liked it.
Oh, they did. I know in one of our live podcasts we talked a little bit about some of that podcast, and then in other things that like how open the cast is in general. And I remember kind of making the connection, and it was a lot from your last podcast with us, that through vulnerability we find human connection to each other. And it, even on a podcast, even from thousands of miles away, even with people who you may or may not meet ever in person, we through that vulnerability we do find human connection, and that human connection keeps us grounded to the fact that we aren't alone, and that people do share our struggles and our joys. So I think that for you to have felt safe enough, and also taken that big step to be vulnerable and to say, this is, it meant a lot to a lot of people. So, so thank you for
Beautifully said. Beautifully said, Bonnie. It's so true.
Yeah, I know it was something that, it took just being ourselves, as you mentioned, Dom, just being comfortable, sitting back here with a tea and just chatting to go in a direction that had so little to do with the TV show, but so much to do with all of our lives, just ideas and perspectives between people. We all get so caught up in our routines and our ruts and so forth. So to have that great conversation, for you to bring up so many great ideas about dealing with anxiety yourself and all of us. Yeah, it's been wonderful to watch it resonate. And the beauty of, the audio podcast, it's always there. As new fans find the show, they're finding that. And it's great for Bonnie and I and the other fans too, because as new people find it, you hear the joy just in their typed words of what it meant to them. So it's just a great example, as Bonnie said, we can't thank you enough for being as open and vulnerable as you've been in many of our conversations or at the conventions and such. It's wonderful to see.
It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure. And I think that that's what is so special about this show in many ways. We, like you say, I think it's a common thread that runs between us all. And like you say, it goes beyond the TV show. It goes into this wonderful family of people where we are all finding, that which connects us, right? And being open enough. And, you see it within the fandom at the conventions and throughout many interactions that I've had. I think it's something unique and very special. And the fact that we hold space for that, really comes back to sort of the ideas behind the show, so it does make sense in many ways that we have developed this really safe space. But, it's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Oh, nice to have another conversation with you guys. I'm excited. What we're going to talk about today. Ooh.
Oh my gosh. I know. I'm sitting here looking at the notes going, okay, what do we do first?
Where do we go?
I know.
Yeah. Where do we start?
Well, you mentioned, holding that safe space and having the fandom and how it does all tie into the show in a weird way. People often think I'm crazy when I, talk about what Wynonna Earp is like, and they're like, okay, but like, it's a sci-fi show about like demons, and you're getting all this life, like positivity and like, all these lessons and all this, found family from that. But, like as we do in every single one of our podcasts, like kudos to Emily and the writers again for, weaving such powerful storylines through the storytelling, has managed to create this unique, lightning in a bottle for the fandom and for everybody involved in the show. But it's been a rough 2 years for the show itself, right? With, the fight, like we after we talked to you, season 3 had just finished, and we were like, oh, you guys are going to go back and filming in a couple months, and that really wasn't the case. It ended up being a giant fight, and then it was another year later before you guys got back to filming. What was that like for you to go such a long time and then finally get on set again after everything that went down? It was a really, really complex thing to live. I think for all of us, collectively, the fandom and the cast and crew had the similar experience. I myself personally, I was in Brazil, and when the fight started, and I felt very far away from it all, but I was waiting honestly for the phone call, from the producers to say, okay, great, you need to be in Calgary on this date. And
I hadn't booked my return ticket because I was going to stay as long as I could before heading back. But of course, that call never came. And, when you're expecting something and then you just don't hear from them, it's a very sort of disconcerting sort of, odd feeling where you're going, hang on a second, is there something wrong? Is there something that we should be worrying about? And of course, then I reached out to the other cast members, and there were rumors kind of going round, and we were speculating, but nobody really knew anything. And then, of course, Fight for Wynonna started, and it all came sort of to a head. And I was in Brazil, and I felt in some ways, I mean, if we go back to the podcast of, that we did last time round and where I was at, like it very much, I was in a really interesting part of my own personal journey, and going to Brazil was very much a big step in that as well. It was finally listening to my gut and deciding to let that lead me rather than, I remember in the last podcast we talked about of the clouds in our minds, and when the clouds part and you see clarity for the first time. And I think really it has been a journey of understanding that clarity doesn't actually come from my mind, but actually comes from somewhere much deeper, somewhere in the gut that sort of is coming through, and that intuition that is so powerful and actually has really led me to exactly where I need to be. So that intuition was telling me, you need to take a break from everything, and you need to go back to Brazil. I just had this really, it's hard to describe, it's hard to put into words why I felt that, but I just knew that I needed to go back. And so I was in Brazil, and I felt, if I'm being really honest with you both, I felt conflicted in some ways, because of course Wynonna Earp is such a huge part of my life, and I care so deeply for the show. And there was this fear of what's going on, and what does this mean? But then on the flip side, there was this sort of inner knowing that in some ways felt like my journey in Brazil wasn't quite over yet. And so I just carried on trying my absolute best to live totally in the moment and to take everything I could from my trip in Brazil. And then, of course, keep the faith and trust as much as I possibly could that everything was going to work out as it was supposed to. So I was in this sort of really interesting headspace, but of course, inevitably there were feelings of fear coming up. And when having contact with the cast and stuff, yeah, of course, we were just, we care so deeply about the show, and it's so important to us that we continue telling these stories for this beautiful fandom that we have come to love and cherish through real, genuine connection, So, there was all of that and more going on all at once. And then obviously as I came back, I think that is when I really felt the weight of everything, because I was off on my own personal journey, and it needed to happen. And then of course, when I came back, I was, made very aware of the extent in which, the fight had happened. And I just found it to be so inspiring. And there's I feel like I'm going a bit all over the place, but there's just so many layers to the experience, which is the fear, then the inspiration that came from it. And really it exposed such, strength within our community, and a sense of togetherness as people came back together. And then finally, as we did, go back to season 4, oh my goodness, the ecstasy that we felt because of the fight that had happened, and because of, of what everybody had been through was really magnificent. And in some ways, you know, it's hard to say this now, but I do think that actually maybe it was supposed to happen in some way. And I think across the board, I think we'd probably all say that we had a much deeper appreciation for what we have because of it. And I think that you see that reflected in the season. We're just all have such a renewed sense of gratitude for it. And regardless whether it was supposed to happen or it wasn't, or whichever way you look at it, it definitely strengthened our family even further. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely.
You mentioned, you know, obviously being in Brazil and going through, you know, your own personal journey, and having been someone who's recently done that as well. Just living your own truth, you know, and finding that truth.
Hell yeah, represent, Bonnie.
It's right. It's right. I know very personally how, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners do as well, that gut feeling you talked about, that just, it starts percolating, and the percolating gets to a boil, and the boil gets to be pressure, and the pressure just, it just becomes the thing, you know, that like you are the only you have to follow. Yeah. So it makes total sense that you're like, you know, I was in a, you know, personal journey. I know a lot of our listeners, I don't know how many of my listeners know that you recently came out, and congratulations.
Thank you,
it's a wonderful thing. Do you want to talk about that a tiny bit, and how the decision to do that, and how that kind of finally came for you?
Absolutely. Oh, we have been on a bit of a similar journey, haven't we, Bonnie? It's been.
Oh my gosh, it's a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary.
A little bit wonderful, though, isn't it? Just when you see those parallels, and I think that so much of my courage came from seeing others around me that were also facing those fears and pushing past them and through them into the light and into a much more liberated version of themselves. And that was so inspiring. So I thank you. I just want to preface by saying thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. It really, you helped pave the way for me. So I have much gratitude. Yes. Okay. So what can I say that will be of interest? Well, I think, you know, this has, I have known that I was queer since I was 9 years old. But I was, I had a few, you know, I don't want to say bad experiences, but a few unfortunate experiences maybe that really, impacted me and led me to believe that it was, wrong, that it was not normal, and, something that shouldn't be celebrated or should certainly be, that shouldn't be celebrated. And I was really keen to fit in, you know, honestly. I think it's fair to say that I was quite anxious around that age. There was a lot going on in my life. It was around my mum and dad's divorce, and I had a traumatic death in one of my animals, died really traumatically. And as a child, there was lots of stuff going on. And I think that like so much of me just wanted to fit in and have an easy ride at school and be liked and be accepted. And that became more important, I suppose, than really living in my truth at that age. Because I mean, it's young, you know, 9 years old is young. You're a child and you're still trying to figure it out. And then through school, it became apparent that, it just kept confirming more and more by hearing what the kids at school were saying, that it was different, and it was not, it wasn't, you know, certainly in the school I was at, it wasn't spoken about openly and freely, and and positively. And so as as somebody who is attracted to all humans, truly, I fancied boys, and I really genuinely liked boys. And so despite there being that sort of niggling, doubt in my mind about what it meant to also be attracted to girls, I found a very, I became, able to really repress that voice, unfortunately, in many ways, because I just sort of like focused on men and boys and followed the crowd and followed my friends and just went down that road. And that was fine until it wasn't anymore, And I think that this journey has been so powerful because, over the years, I've had so many, moments along my journey of like sheer panic of what if, I'm a lesbian? Like, I'll be honest, like that was something that was very present in me. And I still don't, fully understand why I was taught to believe that was something to be feared. And that's something I'm still unraveling because, I think it's a mixture of like society and the way that, the lack of, I suppose the lack of, positive representation in many ways that I had and also, well, I'm sure that there's a multitude of reasons, but, this sort of fear that would come up and not having any place to explore it, and speak openly about it. And then of course, cut to beautiful Wynonna Earp, where I am gifted the role of Waverly Earp. And I sat in, this big armchair in Calgary as I was reading that first episode, where I meet Nicole Hort, and I opened the script and I read that first scene and my heart just dropped right into my gut, like, whew, and I just thought, wow, this is where I'm going to have to finally come to terms with this. This is where I'm going to have to deal with it. And of course, I never told anybody this. And this is something that was very, very much, a very sort of, intimate experience. And now I think I'm finally sort of releasing that into the universe and able to talk about it. But it really was, what followed was just this unraveling of all of those years of repression and understanding what all of it meant and where it all sat for me. And it's been a humongous journey and continues to be, very present. And it's, you think, okay, once you come out, then that'll be it. But no, you're only just really beginning, I think, in many ways, especially considering I've repressed it for, how old am I? 30. So yeah, a good 21 years, until wait, have I done the math right? 21 years? Yeah, 21 years. So, and then, but then of course, like the experience of playing a queer character and meeting the fan base, meeting just such a beautiful representation of the LGBTQ2IA+ community, and having those conversations and seeing so many people come to me with their stories, their coming out stories. And, that it was equal parts amazing and equal parts really challenging, if I'm being honest, because for a while I felt like I was such a fraud. I felt like I was at conventions, promoting pride, promoting, us standing in our authenticity and our pride. And there was this huge part of the puzzle that was missing. And so I would have like these really, really challenging moments where I a convention, and I would sort of teeter on the edge of like, but I didn't feel ready. And then I would go back to my room and just like break down and just feel like, oh my goodness, I wish that I was stronger. I wish I had more courage. I wish I could be something else for these people who are so seeking this positive representation. And I also want to be it for them, but I also know where I'm at in my journey and I have to honor that. So there was this big conflict that happened for a while. And then, you know, I just carried on doing the work on my own, and very much like, as we spoke about going to Brazil, like following my gut, listening to the signs, being really in tune with what was going on personally. Eventually it got to the point where it made sense for me to come out, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's the most liberating thing. And, you know, it's in many ways, I think, my sort of raison d'être, you know, my sort of, what would be the English equivalent, like my mission in life, I suppose, is really to connect with authenticity and promote authenticity across the board. So, you know, it was important that I really lived that myself too. And yeah, I think the thing that's been the most amazing part of it in some ways is, you know, never for a second did anybody say, oh, she's not, you know, she hasn't been honest with us. It was, I think, because we've all been on our own journeys through this, you know, if you are part of the community, we understand that it comes when it's ready and when you're ready. And so that acceptance has just been the most generous and wonderful thing to be on the receiving end. And I'm so grateful to everybody who has just sort of opened their arms and welcomed me into the community. I feel very, very lucky.
Well, listening to you talk, it's like I'm just sitting here nodding the entire time, because if anybody who has gone through the process of, you know, finding themselves living their truth, coming out, they understand, like you said, because it is a very terrifying weight that you carry, and especially like for you and for me as well, decades of baggage, so to speak, wrapped around it, you know, and this, but it gets to the point where it hurts. I often said it hurts. It starts to get to a point where it hurts more to keep it in.
Oh, absolutely.
And when it starts to hurt more to keep it in, that's when you kind of just take that leap.
Yeah. So you have no choice, isn't it? Yeah.
Because it starts to hurt worse to keep it in.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm reminded of you talked about, you know, opening the script and realizing, oh, look, I have to go here. And how terrifying that must have been for you at that time in your life, when you're trying to, like, you know, like obviously like jump out in your career and you're still trying to figure yourself out as a person, and you're like,
also I'm still coming to terms with the fact that I've even got a job, and I'm like, have they made a fucking mistake here? Like, I'm from England, what's going on? You know, there were lots of, it was a mad moment. Sorry, do continue. Yeah.
No, I know. I can only imagine how that must have been, like, oh my gosh, I have to go here to the scary place that I've been sort of pushing off for a really long time. And for me, you know, I'm not sure how it was for you, but like, I wanted to fit in too, like Robbie, right? And I wanted to make everyone else happy. And that was my thing. I did everything for everyone else. I made everyone else happy. I wanted to, and that meant following a certain path.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember watching Wynonna Earp, and it was episode 9, a fan favorite, and of the first season. And Gus said some words that I literally will never forget, because I got goosebumps at the time, because part of me was at that time very much coming to terms with myself in the same way and feeling that pressure. It would be another several years before I would come out. But she said to Waverly, you know, unstick your wings, you know, basically. And like that image of, which now that we know Waverly's an angel is even better.
Yeah.
But it just, it makes me want Gus to come back. What do you know, Gus? But it was that whole idea of unsticking your wings, of having this thing inside of you that you had kept like tamped down, this amazing, beautiful part of yourself that you had kept covered and tamped down and matted down. It was that whole imagery of, if you had wings, like who would want to hide that? And it was me understanding that about myself, that like being queer, those were my wings, and
Absolutely.
I was not allowing myself to fly basically into the full depth of who I was,
so powerful.
It is. And I know what you mean about the fandom, because the fandom was a huge catalyst for me as well. Seeing everyone those first 2 years, seeing everyone living their truth, being authentic, even in the face of such extreme hate sometimes in the world and in their own personal lives. And it just was really inspiring. So I know what you mean. And absolutely. I know that your journey from here on out, your ability to be vulnerable and to be open and honest is going to inspire so many other people that come after, so it's a really beautiful, thing, I think, when people can do that. I mean, obviously not everybody feels safe in their lives to come out. So like, I do want to make sure I put that out there in the podcast, that if, you have to make sure it's your journey. And if you don't feel safe or ready, there's no pressure, there's no rush. It doesn't, it comes when it's ready. So
it does. Exactly. No, I so well said. And I'm really glad that, those words helped you in your journey, as you can imagine. For me, like, it was such a powerful thing to do. And, I want to be clear that despite my sort of, oh my goodness, like I'm going to have to face this now, there was also a real genuine sense of excitement it wasn't sort of fear and dread, but more, yay, yay, I get a space to be me. Right? Like, and what an amazing thing to be able to live it through someone else's shoes in some ways, in order to come into my own truth. And so there was this, like, I was so, and I've said this before, and this was absolutely accurate. I was so excited. I was like, I read it and I was like, yay! Like, I was genuinely so happy and so grateful to be part of a show that was, normalizing this and that therefore I could dive deeper into my own identity and my own understanding. And I think one thing came to mind as you were talking that really shone through, which is like, it's interesting, isn't it? How we, you say that you relate to the feeling of wanting to fit in, right? Like this idea of fitting in, being important, right? And then through my journey and through my journey into my authenticity, both in regards to my sexuality and all other aspects of myself, it really comes to the question is, it depends where you want to fit in. Like there is such an infinite amounts of different shades and colors and different ways of being, and it depends where you want to fit in. For me personally, once I started meeting the LGBTQ2A+ community, it became clear that these were the cool kids. It became clear to me that, and when I say, the cool kids, I mean, more than anything, I just mean that I resonated with this community. And so I'd much rather be a place where I resonate with others than a place that I'm trying to change myself in order to be a part of something else, which doesn't feel authentic and doesn't feel right. And I think that, it's sort of, for me, I think the lack of representation, certainly of bisexuality or, queerness or pansexuality or whatever label you want to put on it, I hadn't been exposed to that. I had no notion that was something that was, even possible, and that was, a thing. So so I felt like, I didn't understand how, so well, I like men. So obviously maybe that's what it is. But actually in finding that chosen family, in connecting with the community, and in being around people that are just embracing who they are wholeheartedly and having the courage to do that, I realized that that's where I belong. And I'd much rather have a sense of belonging than a sense of fitting in. You know, when you put the two next to each other, I know which one I'd rather have. So it's been a journey to really understanding that and going and following that path rather than something that isn't me.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is something that I had to learn too at 40 years old, is the difference between fitting in and belonging. And I'm trying really hard to teach my children the difference, and telling them basically like who you are, what you put out in the world is sort of like your advertisement about and if you're not putting your true self out there, then the people who would love your true self can't answer that ad,
Oh,
and
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, because you have to say things to kids in a way that they get.
Yeah,
that's really helped my son, my oldest son, come into himself, because he was doing the same thing, trying to fit in with the boys, the really sporty boys, and that's not him, and I think that is something that I wish I had learned younger, that the difference between belonging and fitting in, and how can I expect to belong if I'm not putting my true self out there for people to love and to, and to find people who are like that. And now that I've done that, I'm like you, absolutely, you can belong. There are so many, no matter who you are, no matter what you like, no matter what you're into, no matter, there's a group for you. There are people who will love you and make you feel good about yourself and make you feel whole. And that is a whole different set of, that's so different from just fitting in, fitting in reminds me of like squeezing yourself into this little box, that like doesn't feel good. So, that is something that I think I learned through with the fandom too, going all of a sudden going to conventions and meeting all these, fans and other queer people and realizing that like, this is where I fit in, this is where I belong. So yeah, that's a very different impact and different feeling in your life when you can, distinguish between the two.
Absolutely. And it's, when you emit a certain energy, I mean, it's just blooming science, isn't it? You attract this similar things. And like you say, if you're not vibrating at your sort of authentic frequency, you're not going to find those that make you feel supported in your truth. And ever since I have, in all aspects of my life, ever since I have, and it's a continuous journey. It's an everyday practice. It's everyday work. But when I do connect with sort of my true purpose on this planet in this lifetime, and I feel like I am in my authenticity, I'm rewarded like by the universe tenfold, just with the people that I meet, with the interactions that I have, and it's so clear and evident to me that it's sort of the only way that I can that I will find my happiness in some ways, and I think that it goes back to what you were saying in regards to belonging, because it's such a core component of our happiness is feeling like I'm okay as I am, and it's a sort of mantra I have to tell myself all the time in my head, because like, just accepting that you're enough as you are and truly accepting all the different parts of yourself is really, really hard, challenging work to do. And I, fail miserably daily, but I also succeed sometimes. And when you do, oh my goodness, is it liberating? And it feels like, it's just, for me, it's clear that it's important work to be striving towards. And like I say, once you start being rewarded, it spurs you on, it keeps you going to continue down that path. I know I have a long way to go. And, in regards to my sexuality too, like I say, you come out and you think it's going to be half of the work is done, but actually, and it is in some ways, you feel like you leveled up in some ways, but there's still, for me, so much unraveling to do. And that takes time and healing and commitment and patience. But boy, is it worth it, isn't it, Bonnie?
Yeah, it is. But you're so right. It doesn't. It's like you think it's going to end, but it doesn't. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
It's beginning of now, because I'm a mom, a lot of the things I talk about are parenting related, but it's sort of like giving birth, giving birth to yourself. And now you have to raise
spreading those wings. Yes.
Yeah. So,
spreading those wings.
The work just starts, right? Because you're like, okay, great. Now I have this brand new, version of myself. I understand myself better than I did a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. But you never stop understanding yourself better if you're fortunate, and if you're trying to do what you're doing and live authentically and really listen to yourself. I think that's the hardest part, is to listen. I think there's so many. I know you've talked about anxiety, and I know we've talked about depression, and we've talked about all kinds of things on this podcast through the show and everything. And sometimes those voices inside of us, they clutter together, so and they make it hard. Yeah, they make it hard to hear that really true voice that's quieter, that's telling you, like you said, go back to Brazil, or those are quiet voices, but they need to be listened to, and it takes time and effort and work, and I don't think it ever stops. But
absolutely. But then once you just sort of surrender to the path of evolution, just being like, it's a constant, it's just part of your journey. For me, that within itself is just so liberating and so exciting, because you're just like, cool. I don't have to be defined by any specific thing. I am allowed to be constantly changing and refining who I am, and understanding deeper, and exploring, and being curious. And that has really helped tip me into a more positive mindset, because I just keep reminding myself, this too shall pass. When it's dark and you have the shadow side, which are very important, in some ways, but then being able to really, like you say, listen, and then move through it, and move, out of it. Once you do have that many feet, and it's just, okay, great. The path of evolution is one that can be incredibly inspiring and exciting at the same time.
Yeah, when you talked about those voices and the bad ones or the loud ones, the anxiety we talked about on our last podcast with you. After we got off that podcast and we went, I had read something, because I struggle with anxiety too. And something that really helped me, and it's helped me to hear that quieter voice in me, is when those loud voices come, the anxiety, the depression. I read a quote that said, "This is not you. This is something moving through you. Give it space."
I love that. Yes.
And I know. And I got goosebumps when I read that. And I've learned that, and that really changed how because I think I used to own it more and be like, oh, this is me. And I think now I'm like, okay, this is not me. This is something moving through me. Let's just give it space to pass, and give it space. And it does. I can hear that quieter voice better when I realize I'm just giving space to this thing to move through me in a way that it needs to move. So,
I love that. And I think that's something that's more recently become apparent on my own journey, is that I believe the human experience to be equal parts light and dark, shadow and light. And, I spoke about it in my concert, but the nature of duality, and accepting, when those things come, which they inevitably will. It's, I think it's inhuman to not have periods of dark, and some people have more than others, of course, and people struggle with anxiety and depression. And I certainly, as somebody that does and has, and it is a continuous struggle. But when those periods do come, and when those voices are louder, just allow, instead of getting stuck which I used to speak about. I think I may have even said it on the podcast, like that feeling of being stuck used to happen all the time to me. And I would almost like it block myself from coming out of it, because I would like fixate on those voices and I would amplify them, and I wasn't able to just let them flow through me. And I think that with emotion in general, I certainly wasn't brought up embracing the sort of the flow of like, this too shall pass, just like it's okay to be sad, like just be sad and like let it come out and then it will be over, and then, the nature of like all of it, happiness, we are these sort of like ever changing, ever evolving beings. So allowing those things to flow through, I love that so much. And it's something I've been really working on recently, which is, just like you say, allowing the space for them to just flow through and like not attaching yourself to them, but just, working through it. And it's like often there's a lesson in there, or there's something that needs to be sort of and being the observer and letting it come through. God, we're going right into it, aren't we? Bloody hell.
This is a beautiful conversation. This is amazing stuff. I mean, this is a great example of what we touched on at the very beginning. This experience is so not about a TV show. It is about us and journeys and getting a chance to get a perspective some of us don't have, and we all get to learn more about others. This is, again, why it's that special.
Yes, Kevin, I feel that very much in my heart right now. We're so fortunate that this came along, and goodness, when I think about where we came from, and I was just like this, I feel like in comparison, I was just like this little ball of anxiety. I was just like, we've all come so far, I think every single person that has been a part of this journey, as you say, has just come so far. And I was just talking to Kat yesterday, and we haven't caught up in a while, and I phoned her, and she's filming and she's all dolled up and she's got, and I, oh gosh, I've got tears in my eyes thinking about it, because it's just like this. She just looked so well, she just looked so happy and well. And we've come on such a journey, and you just go, it's like that. It's just lovely, to see, people that you've had just such an intimate, relationship with, that you love deeply, and being able to see them shining and where they're at now. And, we talked about, the old times and, Calgary, and it's just, there is just something so magical. And I feel so grateful that we were gifted this, I truly believe that we were gifted this opportunity for all of this to unfold as it was supposed to.
Yep. It's, as Bonnie said a little bit, as a parent and myself as well, this is a perfect example as we talk in life. You don't know what's coming next, and you just have to live in that moment. And Dom, you've talked about this so much, dealing with anxiety and other things. It is a treasure. Just take it. And as Bonnie is looking at with her children, or any of us dealing with other folks, you can be the light, in this tough time, you being you and being open and honest and vulnerable, whether it's yourself or me or any of us, that impact that you can have on someone else, you never truly know. So
true.
Now, one thing you did touch on when you were talking a bit there, Dom, was your concert.
I was wondering if you were going to ask about that.
So, I mean, we're all excited. So we'd love, maybe you could talk a little more about what that was like, finally doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I'd love to. Did either of you see it?
I saw some clips.
Yeah.
I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, goodness gracious, it was huge. It was the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. My goodness gracious. Yes, I still can't believe I did it. It feels like a dream. It feels like this bizarre dream. And I'm still processing sort of the things that came up and the way I felt and what it all means, and sort of, just like unpacking it. But, I was given the opportunity by Kristen, who is a friend of mine and had, obviously was a big part of me coming into my music with, Season of Love, and just on a sort of friendship level, it has felt like she has sort of seen this thing that wants to come out, that's inside of me, and has been gently pushing to give me opportunities in which I can spread my wings, if you like, and hold space for that part of myself. And so she had mentioned, she was like, Dom, I think seeing as you're coming down here, and this was a long time ago that I had it in the diary to go to for a board retreat in North Carolina to meet up with two of my Start the Wave ladies, and talk about how we can best effectuate change in 2021. And that was already in the diary, and I was heading there, which was also a really exciting thing to do. And maybe we can touch on that afterwards. But I was already sort of there, and so she said, seeing as you're coming, I have this new space, and I really think that we could do something special, and we could do a little show. And so I eventually you got to start saying yes. You know what I mean? It's like this, when the universe gives you opportunities, you can say no, and you can say no, you can say no. I have had a terrible habit of saying no for many, many, many years, because my fear and the voices in my head were too loud, and I just felt like I was incapable of doing it because I was just too anxious, I suppose, around that. And so I would say no, but then eventually when this opportunity came about, I said yes. And then of course I thought, why the bloody hell did you say yes? Now I've got to do it. But it was, despite those layers of fear, it did feel right. It did feel like it's something that I started writing music when I was 15 years old, or maybe even younger, honestly. But I got my guitar when I was 15. And so was probably writing songs when I was 15 years old, and then never sharing them with anyone until, this year, really. And so again, much depression, and it's been a journey of like opening up my throat chakra and like allowing that to come out and sharing that with others, which is one of the most vulnerable things you could possibly imagine. Well, certainly for me, it's like my sexuality and my music are up there, like same level for me of just like vulnerability central. And anyway, we were supposed to do the show, and there was supposed to be people. And then, of course, with COVID, we made the decision to make it an online only event. And so that meant that it would just be a live stream, which was an interesting thing to do as a sort of first concert, because one thing I would say is the sort of performing it into a camera and then knowing that there were people watching, but them not being there, was just this really odd experience, and this sort of disconnect that it was really hard for me to sort of compute. And so I did the show, and obviously it was wonderful, and also super scary, and there's so many different layers, and yet I can't quite find the words, it seems, to describe it, but just like such a range of different emotions. And then it ended, and I was on such a high, obviously, because it was just the biggest rush of adrenaline that I'd had in ages, and finally sharing these songs that come from such a big part of my journey over the last 3 years. And then after it happened, it was like, that's it, and done. And everyone was packing up the show, and of course there was no audience there. So I just went into this, I just felt like I was naked. like completely taken off all of my clothes, and I had no idea if it looked any good. You know what I mean? Like, just like no idea what anybody thought or anything, because there was no audience there to sort of give any sort of feedback, and there was no energy coming at me. I think one thing that has become clear about like the exchange of music for me is so special because of the energy transmitted. Like, that's so much of why I want to finally share music, is I really believe in the healing power of music and the energy that is exchanged when live music is played. And of course I didn't have that, so it felt like a big component was sort of missing in some ways. But that said, because of the live stream, and because the reason why I said yes originally, honestly, was because Kristen had said we could make all of the profits go to Start the Wave. And I was like, oh, well, now I have to say yes, like, yes, absolutely. And because of the live stream, we were able to raise, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, we're releasing it tomorrow, but we raised $30,000 to Start the Wave, which is
incredible.
Wow. Incredible.
Amazing. So it was absolutely just so worth it. And I'll be honest, I went through a few days of a bit of a low afterwards, where I just went into my little hole for a second of just feeling really vulnerable and not good enough. And all of the patterns that I spoke about really honestly in my show, like, did come up and did come back, and I had to work through them. But one thing I would say is this time I have been approaching it a little bit differently. And instead of going like deep into a hole and not talking to, or reaching out and not talking to anyone, which is often something that I have experienced in the past. Sorry, somebody is ringing the doorbell. 1 second. But instead of doing that, I've been sort of moving forward and moving through it, as we said before. I need to find my mask. I'm in quarantine, guys. Can you believe it? Because let me just do this. I've just arrived back in Montreal, so I'm in deep quarantine. Bear with me. This absolutely should stay on the podcast, by the way. We should not cut this out. It's quite hilarious. 1 second.
You heard it, Kevin. Not cutting it.
Yep. You're hearing the folks too.
Non, mais je suis sur un...
Daniel, t'en as pas donné.
Non. Oh, merci, Jo. T'es tellement gentil. Non, c'était beau. Je t'aime. Merci. Oh my God. You guys, I have just been delivered some pure maple syrup on my doorstep.
So Canadian. So
Canadian. Oh my God. By my mum's friend. I'm in my mum's friend's basement, at the moment, because I'm quarantining, and they have strict rules here. And you can't leave the house, whatever. And so I just got a delivery of maple syrup. Oh, isn't that nice? I'm so grateful. Oh, that's so lush. So anyway,
just
FYI, we need to have where you just speak French for like 10 minutes on our podcast. I'm going to put that out there, because I'm pretty sure every single one of our listeners just had that thought. They were like, can we just have a French podcast? I don't even know what you're saying, but I'm like here for it. I'm like, oh, it's such a beautiful language. Okay, sorry.
No, not at all. So what I was saying is, like, I instead of sort of, retreating like really deep down into my little hole and just being like, because I have a tendency to then not accept any positive comments. Like, I just think that everybody is lying to me, which is a very, odd and a very unhealthy pattern of mine. But this time, there's something that is telling me that doing this is really going to heal that. And so I really just trying to, I reached out to people that have done it before. And, I messaged Jan, Jan Arden, who's on our show too, who's a singer. And just, oh, Dom, that is so normal. Like, sharing your music is like running through the supermarket naked. Like, that's just what it's like. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's exactly how I felt. And she's like, yeah, that's just part of it, And so instead of just retreating, like, I've really been finding ways to push through it and think about next steps. And instead of, instead of sort of surrendering to this feeling, I'm going, okay, no, this is part of it, and how can I transmute it, and how can I transcend it into something else that will then be more positive coming out of it. So it's been a journey. Is the long and short of it is it's been a journey.
Gosh, I identify so much with everything you just said. Kristen, who also I am familiar with her gentle pushing, you know, I did a song for your season of love.
I know,
so
beautiful.
And it was a journey of that. It felt in the same way as you. Like, I was terrified. I still am. I've got hundreds of songs I've written since I was 15. It's a way that and for anyone out there who is a musician or a songwriter or a writer, you will know what we're talking about, because it's the creative process. You put so much of yourself into it. It's some of your darkest, and deepest feelings and emotions and thoughts. And it feels incredibly vulnerable. And I'm so happy that you said that Jan Arden said it's like running to the grocery store, because that is how it feels. Right. You know, when you write a song, and I did for Kristen, I wrote it, I thought someone else was going to sing it. So that was a two-layer thing. Right. I was like, here, I'm gonna write it. No one will know I wrote it, because I'm like that. I'm like, don't look at me. And I was gonna write it, and I was just gonna check off this bucket list thing. And then she was like, actually, we want you to sing it, and play it, and we actually want it to be all like no band. We want it to be acoustic. So it's like layer upon layer upon layer of vulnerabilities there, you know. And I know that feeling of sending it out and being like, oh God, what did I do? And you just have this feeling of like, I'm not good enough. It wasn't nobody liked it. Like, you know, just it's amazing the stuff you can do to yourself in your head over something that honestly is beautiful, and you created. And your concert was incredible. Your songs are beautiful, and I'm so happy that you feel that you took that step. I feel like it is it's so great to feel that level of like, and I don't know if it ever gets easier. Maybe, you know, I guess.
I hope it does. Bloody hell! I'm sure it does. It does in some ways. You know, I'm sure that there are new things that come up, but certainly surely the initial thing is going to be the hardest part of it, and then it will just, you know. Surely, gosh, I hope it does anyway. I think that it does. I think that's why people do continue pushing through fear, because there is something, despite that vulnerability and that, you know, the sort of darker layers. There is also this sense of liberation and freedom that comes with that sharing, right? That I think is the thing that drives us in some ways, you know. And just like hearing, it was weird because, of course, like. I don't have a very strong relationship with social media, as you know. And so it was weird, like sort of coming afterwards and thinking like, do I go on Twitter to like find out how I did? Like, that doesn't seem right. Like, I just like, you know, like I don't that, and, you know, the parts of social media that I have had complex relationships is that sort of sense of like seeking validation through that, and that, so that really didn't feel right, you know, to then go and dive into that to sort of see if I was good enough, and if I'd done it, if I had done okay. But that said, like just hearing, you know, from various people, afterwards that were sort of, that found the music to be helpful or healing or whatever, like really that's the thing that is driving me. And if it, you know, resonates on some level, like with art, like it was always going to resonate with someone. Like that's the nature of art, is it's, you know, each to their own, and everybody has, different things that they love and that they connect with. And much like we were saying with like belonging, you know, you have to just be, I think you have to just be okay with the fact that it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But that's all right. Like it's going to be someone's maybe, and that somebody's going to hear those words, and it's going to be, you know, I'm thinking about your song right now, like how beautiful it was. Like there's going to be some people that will have heard that, and it will have just like really resonated, because that's just the nature of this thing we call life. You know, we all experience it in different ways, but we also have such strong, things that connect us. And so if it does resonate with people, with some people, then, you know, job done successfully, right? You just go, okay, it was sort of worth it to find that connection through, especially during this time.
Yeah, exactly. Especially during this time. I think the next time you do it, if God willing, COVID's better and you can have a live performance, it'll feel different because
100%,
I know, like as an artist, as a songwriter, you create this thing and you're very protective of it because it kind of feels like your baby. And then, but part of you is like worried, like, what if I'm the only one who thinks my baby's cute,
Yeah.
And then you do this show. So if you're out on stage and you can feel the energy of the crowd, it becomes this living moment.
Shared experience.
Yes, exactly. A shared experience where you're giving of yourself and the audience is giving back to you in this beautiful moment. I think when you having to do it like you did, and also, or like, just dropping a song like on, iTunes, you have no idea of like whether anyone, I sort of think about that, and I think about how that must, in a way, probably mimics. Here we're going to go back to the show. The first season of Wynonna Earp, like where I remember meeting you in San Diego for the first time, and you told me you were like, "This is incredible." It was the first time you met fans because so much of what you did in Calgary at the first season was like, in a bubble, in a vacuum. You're just doing this,
but
and
no idea if anyone's going to like it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then all of a sudden you go to con and people are like lining up outside of the IDW art studio.
Yeah.
Around the corner.
Like, people are here.
You were so excited. And we were all over the moon. Even I remember Allison was like, I didn't know we'd have this many people. Like they were lined up around the block, and it was
that was such a special day, wasn't it? Wow.
It really was. And but it was that whole sense of like, wow, look at what we like. People, it did resonate with people, and so hopefully, like, I hope we get to see you perform live. That would be amazing.
I appreciate that. I hope it's in the future too. I really do. We like I say, I'm taking steps forward, which feels good right now. So that's a win within itself. I think every time you do something, again, in spite of fear, and you kind of step through with courage, like that's a feat within itself. So I'm just sort of taking little steps and unsure exactly where it will lead, but grateful to have had the first opportunity, and I'm sure that I can't imagine that's going to be the last. Fingers crossed, anyway.
Yeah. You mentioned the vulnerability of being on stage. We've talked about coming out, your journey. Just finding safe space for you to move through difficult emotions. I mean, this podcast has been amazing. One of the things that you mentioned being so pivotal in your journey, but also in your life in general, has been representation. And not just, and I use the term representation in lots of different ways. The representation, obviously, in the queer community, but also like seeing other people doing things that are authentic for themselves, that are scary, and giving you the courage to maybe get up there. And I'm particularly thinking about that concert with Emmy in London, and, watching her perform and stuff like that. I feel like, every time you see people doing it, the thing that is inside of you that's crying to do it too gets a little bit louder, But with representation, and we'll pull it back to the show for a second, has been so great on the show in so many different ways. And I think that has resonated with so many different types of fans and different people. And in season 4, we really got the representation turned up quite a few degrees. It was really great. Just briefly, when there was a very pivotal scene on some stairs.
I was honestly thinking, I wonder which one she's going to say, and I don't know how I didn't. Yeah, that I was actually thinking of the proposal scene was also something that I found to be just so. Oh, I just loved that scene so much as well. But yes, of course, the stair scene. Yeah, the sexy stairs. Yeah. Yeah,
so I'm going to ask about the stairs, and Kevin's going to ask about the proposal. So that's kind of how we decided. So in the stairs, obviously that was a very, I think it caught a lot of people in the fandom were like, oh, is this a 10 p.m. time slot now? was it difficult? How safe, like how did you feel going into filming that kind of scene? Was it, difficult? Or, I mean, I know obviously you and Kat have a very special relationship and friendship, and everyone in the crew and the cast have been, when we were there, I know how much of a family unit it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a big thing, whichever way you slice it, it was a big thing for us to do, both, for the show and personally, and also for the fandom. But it was really important. And I think that I'm really grateful that it came at a time where I was in a place where I felt, sort of, confident within my own queerness, if that makes sense. Like I'm really grateful for the timing of it in terms of where we were all at with it in our journey. I think it came at the right moment. And because we had lived such a big, few years of like really understanding the importance of representation, the main thing that, Kat and I felt was just how we just really wanted to do a really great job on so many levels and make sure that it was, that we were serving the community in a really honest and delicate and, real way. And I think that, from top to bottom, like from the beginning of the experience to the end of shooting it, I would say it went as good as it possibly could have across the board. I was so impressed with the director and with Em and with Kat and with myself. I was really proud of the work that we did. I mean, when we first, read it, obviously that was that moment of like, okay, so we knew it was coming. But we didn't know when and how and whatever. And it was because of the nature of how we were filming the episodes, because of Mel directing, we filmed 2 and 3 before we filmed 1. Wait, is that right? 3 and 4, but 3 and 4 before we filmed 1 and 2. So what episode is it in? Do you remember?
2.
So I think we did 2 and 3. Anyway, regardless, it was really early on in filming. So we had a humongous break, and Kat and I were at my house. She came over and we both sort of knew that it was something that we were going to have to talk about. And we were a little bit shy, because there's just like, it's a big thing to do. And like, we're just like, we know how much like it means to us. And we've never done anything like that before. So we were sort of catching up. And then after we had a glass of red wine, and then it was like, right, okay, let's get down to it. Like, this is what we're doing. And how do you see this happening? And what would you like from this experience? And we just had like this really great open and honest conversation about like what it might look like. And I said, for me, there was, that we were talking about, shall we have a sort of intimacy coach or somebody, because you can have somebody there that really sort of helps lead it all and make sure that you feel safe and, just coordinates the whole thing. And we were like, yeah, maybe we should get that, because we really care about making sure that it is, that we do the best job possible, because we know the importance of like true representation. And so we were like, maybe we should get someone. And then throughout the process, it sort of became clear that actually, maybe we didn't need, a third party there. And actually, if we just really took it upon ourselves to really, lead the ship, if you like, and decide, like, I mean, really like mechanically, like deciding, okay, so where Nicole is right now in her journey and where Waverly is right now in her journey, like, what do you think it's going to look like? What do you think what positions are we going to do? How, like, does it make sense if like Nicole is driving this in this part and then maybe Waverly's like this and then, next thing you know, we're blooming doing positions on the sofa going, well, maybe if we did this and then maybe if we did this, like it's in this really like playful, friendly way of going, I feel like maybe if this transition to this and then, and we sort of came to the director and and the showrunner with this choreographed piece of like, this is how we feel the characters would be interacting at this point in the journey. Does this achieve the things that you want? And we had a really great conversation with them, and they were like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And, you know, okay, well, where are we going to shoot this and how are we going to do it? And it just felt like a really collaborative, positive experience from start to the end. And I just really felt proud of the way that, I mean, we always have kept the importance of representation like really high on the list, but it was a great what's the word I'm looking for? It was a great I've lost my word, but it was a great sort of moment for that to shine through. And then in regards to the filming on the day, you know, it felt like it was over before we knew it. I thought that those things, you know, take quite a long time, but actually the crew was so respectful. Paolo, I thought, did such a beautiful job, and his choice to sort of be fading in and out, and Corey was pulling focus. So he said, don't worry, like any time that anything would be seen, Corey is going to pull focus. So that means you go from like sharp image to blurry. And then of course we had Benny on Steadicam that was moving in and out and really doing a dance with the camera, and then same thing, obviously the sound guy is like doing a dance too. So it really felt like we were all involved in this sort of choreographed dance piece in some ways that then helped us to feel like no one was sort of perving or being weird, because everyone was so in the moment of like creating this beautiful scene. And I think that like really shines through, and it's this I felt like everyone was so respectful from start to finish. There was it was everything that I could have hoped it to be. And obviously, as you say, we have such an amazing crew. We have such amazing directors and cast members that I wouldn't have expected anything less. But at the same time, it was just like this really nice relieving moment of, okay, you know, we know how important this was. And I like to think that we pulled it off, and we did our absolute best. And yeah, it was kind of quite pain-free and very quick, and just like this really beautiful moment for these two characters that I know people have sort of been waiting for in some ways. And so it was really nice to be able to give that to the community.
It was an incredibly beautiful scene. It, from a viewer point of view, watching it, I couldn't help but think, God, if I had seen something like this
right
20 years
oh my
ago,
God, Bonnie,
right?
Me too. That is literally what I was thinking the entire time. I was like, oh my gosh.
Everything I had ever seen prior to the last, you know, while, I guess, you know, the last 10 years is, for me anyway, everything I'd ever seen didn't resonate with me. It wasn't, it didn't show it through the right lens, I guess. It would be a great way to say it. It was always shown through this very, male gaze, you know,
yeah.
And it didn't do it. I didn't see it as me because of that, you know, because it was, overly, I can't even explain it, but when I saw what you guys had done, it was so beautiful. It was so moving. There was the perfect blend to me of this like passion and intimacy and romance and everything that it should be, you know? And I think if I had seen that 20 years ago, I think I would have probably started my journey a lot sooner, because it really, you know, because it showed it in a way that I think people need to understand and see. And it was really, you guys did such an amazing job.
Good. I'm so glad. Thank you for reflecting that back. That means a lot, because that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah, all the choices that you guys made were perfect. And I'm not the only person who thinks that. I know the entire fandom, I think, like, was silent for about 20 seconds on Twitter, and honestly, people really, really resonated with it, and for the right reasons.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that.
For all the right reasons. So, well
Wonderful.
done. And
Thank you.
I know that must have been a bit, like you said, kind of, okay, we're going here. Let's do this, but it was the right. I mean, from a story point of view, it was the right time because the Way Hot has been obviously, a fixture. It is the, romance of the series, and I think it was a really great moment for fans, and I think you guys did a fabulous job.
Yay! Thank you. Thanks, Bonnie. I appreciate that.
You folks really, with that scene, and then also at the end of episode 6, the proposal. I mean, talk about just giving the fans so much.
That was such a beautiful scene to film
in this season. I mean, I'd be very curious to know, Dom, do you remember when did you find out that you'd be doing the proposal? Is that far in advance or just?
Question. I don't. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. My memory is pretty shocking with stuff like that. Let me try and remember. So we would have been, I think, and you might have to ask Kat this just to double, triple check. But if my memory serves, I would say that it was just as we would have had the scripts. We usually get the 2 scripts before as we're filming the episodes previous. So, it wouldn't have been too long in advance. But I'm pretty sure I knew, or certainly I suspected that we were going to redo the proposal. And I was so happy to see that, that Waverley took the lead with it, in that first moment there. I just think it was perfect. And it's just so beautiful. And the way that Kat looks at Waverley, oh my gosh, every time I see it, my heart melts because it was just a really, really special film scene to film.
Yeah, it was very beautiful. I mean, very certainly made me and many others so emotional and wonderful to see us get a chance to actually see it done like that. I mean, how was it filming it that day? Did it kind of come naturally, or was there a lot of technical?
Actually, it was it was too good to be true. So we had Ron Murphy once again, who always seems to get these really big pivotal scenes for way hot scenes, and Ron really loves filming iconic way hot scenes. I think it's one of his favorite things to do in the show. And so he spent so long because he was just we've got to get this right. I really love this scene. And I think that, and so we ended up going really over time because we were just doing, really taking the space to explore that scene and even so much so that Kat and I were I really feel like we could move on. It's we felt bad that we were taking up so much of the day, because there's so much to do and there's other scenes to be filmed and stuff. But we were very, very appreciative of that and how much care he also put into making sure that we got it right. And I'd say that I felt really, there's some scenes, that where you feel sort of in the pocket and really in the right headspace to do, and that day, and sometimes it's not, and that's more challenging, and you look back and you think, oh bloody hell, I really wasn't able to get there for whatever reason. But that day I felt really aligned, and I just felt really happy for the characters, and I felt I cherished every single second of it. And I loved that all of the other characters were there in the room as well, that we all shared that moment together. And I loved getting down on one knee. I really did. It was just this really gorgeous experience where I was able to just fully live in that place of love and just really experience that through somebody else's story. And of course, I just think it was great next to the fire. And I just thought that so many things came together, and it was exactly as it should be. Yeah,
and it's funny. I was going to ask you about the getting down on the knee, because yes, that just talk about little goosebumps when I saw it. It fits so beautifully.
Yeah. Oh, sweet Waverley.
Why do you think it was so important to have Waverly take the lead on that? Because I agree with you completely, 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see because you just mentioned that, and I just wanted to see what your thoughts were.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether I'm going to be able to articulate it. It was really important to me. And why was it so important to me? I think partly because of the last moment, the moment outside where it was in this heightened state of trauma in some ways, that when we were out on the porch there, it was directly after she'd just seen her dad, who she just found out was her dad, like, die, and it was just like this. She was in this state of just like, loss and not wanting to lose anyone else, and just like wanting to, obviously, like, loving Nicole so much, but just feeling like I want us to be together forever. Like, life is too short, right? That's what it felt like for me. It was just like, life is too short. We should get married. And there was just like so much uncertainty in it, not from Waverly, but I just mean in the moment, like, just, it was such an odd, it was just a really odd moment. I found it to be quite difficult to understand exactly what was going on, but it was just like so many layers to it. And I think that then in that moment, I think, Waverly has been wanting to make it right, I think, for a long time, throughout that first half of the season. Like, it's something that she really genuinely, she wants to show that, like, actually, like, yes, it was in a really odd, heightened moment, but actually, like, I truly want to marry you, and this is something that goes beyond that. Like, yes, it was sort of the catalyst to push it to the forefront, but I really want you to know that I meant every word, and like, I mean every word, and I truly feel it. So I think that there was that was definitely coming through, and she wanted to be able to express that. And then I just also think, like, because of Waverly's journey, maybe, Nicole's been married before. And I think that there is something really empowering about the fact that, like, how far Waverly's come, and then to be the one who's making the choice that this is, she wants to. I'm like smiling so much that, like, as I was saying it, my mouth is just like, my cheeks are so far, but it's true. I'm just like, yeah, yeah. Like, so proud of her, Yeah. Like, if I put it next to my own journey, I feel the power behind that, of just, it's a true mark of, like, stepping into her power. And does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just.
No, it's perfect.
Yes.
You said you couldn't articulate it, but you've done an amazing job.
Good.
that is just spot on. Like, it's exactly what I felt when I saw that. And it took me a while. It's just like you. I sat there and tried to figure it out. And I don't even know if I talked about it on the podcast, Kevin, because I still hadn't wrapped my mind around why
it was important.
It meant so much to me that Waverly did it. But what I felt like when I watched it and processed it was that, for me, and maybe this is reflective of my own journey, because I think you do pull things from art like that resonate with you. But I feel like Waverly spent so much of her life doing everything for everyone else and making decisions that she thought, she was with Champ because it's what she was supposed to do. She was, and I think it was important, like you said, for her growth and her journey, that this was something she was doing for just herself, for her. And, because, like, even fighting demons and even all the things that she's doing that, for the love of Wynonna and for, obviously, for her family and everything. This is the one thing that Waverly's been able to do for just herself. And for her to be able to say, I choose this. This is what I want. I think was a big step for her, because I think she always puts everyone else first, and she puts and this was a moment where she was like, this is what I want. And that was really powerful, because I think watching her journey, watching her grow as a character. But also, like you said, that's probably what resonated with me as well. It was really
And
great.
I only just really realized that as we were talking through it. So I appreciate you asking that question, because, you know, it is, of course it's got so much to do with our own experience, you know, and how I just obviously living it through Raven, I just can imagine how empowering that is to be able to say, like, this is who I am. It's a big moment of saying, this is who I am, and this is what I love, and this is something that I'm all in. You know, I'm all in, and that's it's such a defining moment. Yay!
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh my gosh, this has been. Can we just do this? You're in quarantine for how many more days? We'll just do this every morning.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I've just been to like an amazing therapy session, and like I feel so light and good. But Kevin and I, in all seriousness, Kevin and I do appreciate how much you're willing to come on the podcast and just open up and be yourself and chat with us for hours. We love you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and
my absolute pleasure.
To see you again when all this craziness of COVID is done and we can start Earping again.
Yes, absolutely. Who knows if there's one thing we've learned this year, it's that you said something really great halfway through the podcast. I can't remember what it was exactly, but just, you know, just when you think you've got it sussed, figured out, you know, there'll be a curveball that will come in. And you didn't say that, by the way. I've just sort of completely changed your words, but there's the notion of like, the notion that, you know, we can't really plan anything, you know, and I think that this time has been a big lesson of surrendering to the unknown and just, I'm really having to slow down, and I'm sending out as much love and light as I possibly can to all those who are struggling during this time. And, you know, I also hope that we are on the way out, and that actually things are going to start to get better from here. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both. Thank you so much for, as always, holding such a safe space and doing all the amazing work that you do to bring about connection, especially during this time when we all need it. We all need it real bad, you know.
Well, thank you. And before we go, I know we didn't really get to talk too much about Start the Wave, but will you talk briefly, really quickly about, you mentioned saving, or, you know, how much money was able to be earned. But tell all of our listeners about Start the Wave, where they can find it and how they can get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing that up. Start the Wave for those of you who don't know, is my sort of passion project, and really has become such a huge part of my life. I believe wholeheartedly in it. We are a non-profit organization that are focused on empowering and supporting, amplifying and uplifting people that are doing positive change in the world. We do that by supporting financially. So, you know, positive change in action. We are here to redistribute money and get that financial support to the places that need it most. And we do that by really supporting grassroots initiatives all over the world. And we have just finished selecting the first round of projects that we are going to be funding, which is incredibly exciting and gets me, I'm so thrilled. I can't even express how amazing it feels to be able to help those that are doing amazing work in a world that so desperately needs it. So that is really exciting. And then we also try to achieve positive change by amplifying the work of those the people that are doing great things, you know, whether it be through our social media or our website. So make sure to check out at start_the_wave. So start the wave, but with 2 underscores in between the words, on Instagram. And if anybody has any projects or knows of anyone in the local community that needs a little bit of a boost, make sure to contact us so that we can just amplify those voices. And lastly, we are a platform that encourages growth. So much like we've spoken today on this podcast about really surrendering to evolution, both internally and within ourselves, and just getting comfortable with change, that, absolutely has an impact on the collective, and also, extending that into the actions that we take and the way that we decide to show up and navigate in today's world. We need positive change makers now more than ever. So we're really trying to create a community that supports healers and change makers all over the globe, to come together and join forces and be stronger because of it. So yes, make sure to check us out if you feel so inclined. Our website is www.startthewave.org. And like I say, Instagram at start_the_wave. And I think that is everything, certainly for now. But yes, absolutely stay posted, stay tuned. Is that the right word? The right thing to say? Stay tuned, because we have some really exciting announcements coming up over the next couple of weeks as we move into move through the end of 2020 and hopefully into a much brighter, more positive 2021. So it's definitely the time to get involved if you aren't already. And yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, Bonnie. I really appreciate it. As you know, it's a project that is so close to my heart. And so please continue spreading the word. And, for anyone that's listening, the more people, the more ears that this gets to, the more we will be able to strengthen and create the positive change that's needed in the world. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, maybe we'll have to have you on for a special Start the Wave podcast where we only talk about Start the Wave.
That could be cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, I'd be up for that for sure. But awesome. This has been so awesome. I'm so glad that we did this. I think we've been on the phone for 2 hours? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, 2 hours. Wow, we've done 2 hours. But I think listen, how can you get 3 years or 2 years into anything less than 2 hours? I think it was necessary. We covered a lot, and I hope that anyone who's listening hasn't fallen asleep. If you have, that's fine. Sleep is good. Wake up. Time to wake up. End of the podcast. We really appreciate everything that you guys do, and take care of yourselves, and I hope that you have a beautiful holiday season, and that you rest up and find peace and calm as we move into, hopefully, like I say, a better year ahead.
Right there with you. We really appreciate it, Dom. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Bye, guys. Lots of love.